start up. Booyah! There we go. We are recording. Hello, hello, my beautiful friends. Mark Takata, technical evangelist for Adobe ColdFusion here with a webinar that unfortunately had a broken link in the thing that was sent out to people who signed up. So apologies to everyone watching this on recording because you didn't get a link. I think I may reschedule and do this one more time, potentially. Third time's the charm. Um, but I'm going to do a full one here for all of you that made it in. Special party, right? Bottle service in the front. Um, just forgive me. So, as Scott had mentioned, this is a version of a talk that I did in DC a couple of weeks ago. We were in Washington, DC for CF Summit East 2023, which was awesome. Primarily a government military summit, but also we had a bunch of East Coast companies that usually can't make the trip all the way over to Vegas every year. It was a one-day event, kind of smaller than Vegas, but also pretty darn neat. And we also taught about, oh gosh, 30 people the day before the event to get their Adobe Certified Professional, Adobe ColdFusion stuff together, which was awesome. Today, though, I'm going to be talking about building applications in ColdFusion using REST and GraphQL. And you're like, Mark, that's all you ever talk about. And we know about REST in ColdFusion. I know. And I'm not going to teach you how to expose a RESTful API or whatever. Like, you've already done that, or you can go have Brian teach you how. He's way better at teaching you how. Yeah, what I'm going to be doing is something a little bit different. And this is something it's been a thing for a while, but I think it's important for us as CF developers to kind of get up to speed on this. Sometimes we pay so much attention to our own stuff that we don't think about what else is out there. And so this idea is good morning, John. The idea here is using RESTful APIs that are exposed and available to build or expand on your own tooling, right? So basically being able to say, okay, there is this API that I can go and hit, and it can give me a bunch of information. And then maybe there's like a second API. You could combine the two and get something all new, or you could just use one and add it as kind of a microservice to your own application instead of having to build all of that feature set by yourself. And there are a huge number of these out there. Some are free, some are paid. Some have like a free tier and then they get paid. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And what we've been seeing, especially the last few years, is a huge number of applications are really just being assembled from pieces, right? Not necessarily built up from scratch, kind of in that old school monolithic way, but also not even as like a home built microservices way. Like people are leveraging other tooling and doing integrations and pulling things together to create new, maybe bigger than the sum of their parts applications. So hold on. Oopsie, one second. Just let me make sure. Okay. So what are we going to start off with? So I'm going to start off with something that I didn't show in DC. So, woo, surprise here. If anyone was in DC and saw this, this is going to be a little bit extra. So I'm going to be showing you how to use the Google RESTful API endpoint for the translate capability. So obviously, most of us probably have used Google Translate, I would say. I have a lot. But you may not know that you can actually hit an API and like create your own translation stuff in your own apps. And so what I'm going to do is something kind of boring because I just want to show you the basics on how this is going to work. I'm just going to build like a clone of what the API looks like, and of what the translate app looks like. And I'm going to show you how I did it, but you can then take that and potentially expand on it and maybe add something to your own app and all that. So first of all, how do you start, right? Like that's always the question. Like where do you come into and start? So you're going to start on Google Cloud, actually. So first of all, you're going to Google Translate API, right? Google Translate API, and then you're going to run into, okay, you need an API key for this to actually run. And so you're going to have to go and and get a Google Cloud account. But surprise, you probably already have one. Okay, because if you have Gmail, Gmail runs in the cloud. It's technically part of G Suite-ish. I don't know how exactly that filters out into segmentation, but you have a Google account that you can then sign up for Google Cloud with, and you're off to the races. So here is an example of mine, and you can see here I have a couple of different accounts that I have in there. I have some for some of the GCP services. So I did a different demo in Washington D.C. with like buckets and all that, and that's being added to ColdFusion 2023. We're doing like native support for some of the GCP services, but also this is the place that you go and you generate an API key. Okay. So one thing to note, the Translate API has a free tier, and it's quite large, right? There's a lot that you can pass in and out of it. Like you're never going to hit it testing. If you have a smaller app, you probably won't even overload the amounts that turn into like a paid tier. But eventually, if your app gets big enough, you do have to worry about, like what that costs. And so definitely when you Google uh, the Translate API, look into the costs area because there are some of those. This isn't like fully free. It's kind of like the map API, right? Like the maps are free to an extent, and then past that, it's whatever. That's a very common uh, pattern, by the way, that you'll see, and we'll see that also in AI, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. So anyway, so here we've got we've got the API key, but what does this code actually look like? So what I'm going to show you is a couple things. So first of all, let's just look at the front end. So the front end is I don't know why this is Airtable. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, guys. One second. Ah, there it is. Okay. So this is the front end, and I'm doing a couple of things here, and I just want to kind of show you real quick what this looks like first. So obviously, like stellar design here, right? I know everyone wants to hire me for my design skills. There's a line that forms on the left. Um, but something to keep in mind here. So I've got a couple of drop downs here, which have languages. Now you might say, oh, well, how did you generate those? Like, did you just create a giant list? No, that would be stupid. I wouldn't do that, right? Google actually has an API for that. And scrub this, sorry. One second. That was supposed to be hidden. um, my bad. Eh, sorry, I had my key available. Nobody copy that. Hopefully that worked. We shall see. Okay. So what I'm doing up here is I have a function called create language list, and I go out to this API endpoint that Google has, which essentially is a list of all the languages that they support, which is kind of useful, right? Because what if they add a language? What if they remove a language? That would be weird, but who knows? Maybe they could do that, right? They might, but yeah, they might add, I don't know, Klingon. That'd be rad. Maybe they have that. I should go look. And so what am I doing here? So I'm going to this endpoint, I'm passing in my API key, which hopefully will work, even though I just sort of plop this in there. Who knows, it'll probably crash, but hey, live demo. And then I pass in um, the target language for it to be displayed is English. So you can actually like display the lists in other languages too. It's kind of odd. Then I get back the struct that comes back. I deserialize it. I do a little bit of playtime here, and then I actually just what I did in here is I put a select, and then I just run create language list, which outputs the option values with the language and the name. Ta-da! And that's how you have this. Let's check. Do they have Klingon? That would be awesome. They don't have Klingon. Okay, I'm upset. Okay, so here we go. So you've got that. So I've got a from and a to. And by the way, there is actually a feature where you can have it auto detect. So obviously, if you've been on Google, you'll see that sometimes there's like an auto detect, and that is available, but that was a little bit extra. Like like you have to do a little bit of fiddling with it. I didn't want to do that here. I just wanted to make it like super old school and basic. Like you pick the language, boom, and you go. But you can also like flip the languages side to side. You can auto detect. You can do all sorts of fun stuff. So I'm going to uh, like cross my fingers and say, I'm gonna have this restart. I'm gonna go from English. Give me a language. Scotty, give me a language. Bulgarian. Big surprise. Okay. I'm gonna say I love ducks in Bulgarian. Theoretically, will it work? There you go. So that is I love ducks in Bulgarian. And okay, so how did that happen? Because clearly that's more than just the drop downs, right? Let me get to that. Okay. So if you then go to get translated text, I do quite a bit of error checking here. Okay. And I just did this because I wanted this to be a somewhat usable app and to kind of show you that there is more cruft than what might go into it. But essentially in here, what I'm just doing is I'm saying, if any of the fields are broken or wrong or something's going on, go ahead and put error text. I could have done this in try catch too, but I try to avoid those wherever I can. But so here's the magic. Okay, so here is the translation endpoint. And you'll see it's version 2, which changes some of the fields. And what are you passing into it, right? And as I saw, by the way, I sort of buried the lead here. So I'm using CF-HTTP to hit these and pull back the data as a struct, right? So that's kind of automatic in ColdFusion, real easy. I'm doing it all in script, of course. You could do this in tags. So what am I passing in here? Okay, so it requires several params to be passed in. And this is kind of the weird, interesting thing. They're supposed to be passed in as URL parameters. That's the name. Or sorry, that's the type. However, this is a post. So yeah, there's a few things in here. Maybe at some point we'll do like a native integration with CF and add that to our Google thing. I don't know, but that threw me originally to try to get this running. But so you need the type URL, and then you've got a queue. You have a target, a source, and a key. Okay, and so the queue is the query. It's the text that you're going to translate, and I'm passing that in from that lower left, right? Then I pass in the target language, the source language, and then your API key. Boom. And coming back from that is going to be the translated text in whatever format, and that'll come back as a struct. And no, wait, I'm sorry. It comes back as JSON. It comes back as JSON, but I'm doing a little bit of fiddling here because I wanted to deserialize it to pull some of the cruft out and then pull back just the one piece, which is actually in the array is quite large and quite complicated and actually kind of hard to go through. But essentially, if you take the translated array and pick position 1 out of it and grab the translated text, you'll get the text that shows up in the right. So there you go. Okay, so that is kind of a start for making an app. Now, what could you do with this, with your own app? Well, I mean, you could literally have a little app that, like, if you needed to have some text put in that you're maybe doing notes or something, you could allow someone to translate from their language to your language what the notes are. Or they can just write the notes in whatever language, and maybe you've got a translate from to for the note that you could pass into this to get it back in your own language so that you could read it, right? So now we're like extending it, right? Or another potential use case, which I thought about building, but I didn't, was if you have generative AI and you're doing like a generative AI thing, you could potentially, a lot of generative AI, by the way, takes a limited set of languages, right? So you can't just you can't pass Bulgarian into it necessarily yet. I mean, at some point probably, but yeah, it's usually English, Spanish. I think they have like French and Russian, things like that, Chinese, but it's a limited set. So you could potentially say, okay, well, the language that I speak is not one of those. I could create a front end by writing my language, it translates it, and then passes the translated text to the generative AI, which then brings back whatever the heck I needed back in that language and then translate it back. Now you're cooking with gas. So hopefully people are getting excited about that. I know I am. All right. So moving to the next part. Not a. Hold on. Actually, I'm going to do GraphQL next. I'm going to do AI last because it's the most fun and there's a lot of it. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on GraphQL. I've already spoken on it many, many times. I hope all of you are already fairly familiar with what GraphQL is. It was written by Facebook. It's a query language that you can query API endpoints instead of just getting a RESTful result. Like as you saw before, I passed in one thing to a RESTful endpoint and I got one thing back. I can't really mess with what that thing is. I can't pull back multiple things. I can't filter things. Like I can just get the thing that the developer wanted me to get off of that RESTful endpoint. Depending on how complex you can get, you can pass multiple things sometimes, but it's pretty locked down. GraphQL, very, very free, open. You can do almost anything you want based on what the users allow, because there's actually a JSON based schema that they will build on their end, right? But things to know about GraphQL: it's open source. It's really a horse and buggy situation with REST. REST is the horse and buggy, and this is the car. Like, it's significantly better in nearly every way. So this is just a little bit of info about it. There's way more features that you can do. As I said, you can do a lot of queries, very customizable stuff, but also it supports things like subscriptions. It lets you like modernize and enhance your legacy apps kind of right out of the box. The reason I'm spending so much time on it is because we are releasing the ability to pull down client-side GraphQL in CF 2023, which is like about to launch. Like literally, I smell the rocket fuel. Like we're almost ready to go. So okay, but what about, I don't know, like how many GraphQL things are there out there? Well, more and more they are coming. Um, One thing that I did, which was kind of cool, and I've done this a lot, and this is just one of those things that I think people could find very, very useful, is there's a tool called BaseQL, and there's a link to it here on my useful links. And BaseQL allows you to expose Google Sheets and Airtable um, as a GraphQL endpoint. And so basically, for the Sloppy Moose Running Club, which I'm part of, they had a Google Sheet because the people who run it are like an airline pilot, and I don't know. I think a secretary is the other person. The secretary knows some things about like Google Sheets, like fairly good at spreadsheet stuff, but programming, no, they don't know what a URL is. They don't know any of that, right? So they built this Google Sheet, and they track how many people, like when you go to a running event, you sign up, and then after you go 5 times, you get a T-shirt. After 50 times, you get an awesome T-shirt. After 100 times, you get a hoodie. Problem is, you lose count, right? They only do it once a week, and then after whatever 65 weeks, you're like, oh my god, how many times have I gone? Have I gone like 60, 70, whatever? And so these guys were just constantly getting berated by like, hey, can you look it up? And so they have to open their laptop, and it sucked. So I saw that, and I was one of the people berating them because I wanted my T-shirt. Darn it! And so I said, well, hold on. Why don't we expose something online and let people look things up, right? So I'm not going to show you that because that's kind of a boring. But this is one potential. Unless somebody wants to see it. Anybody want to see it? I'm going to show you a more exciting one. So let me show you a more exciting version of this, also using BaseQL. How many of you are familiar with Airtable? Hopefully, like a lot. So Airtable is like Google Sheets, but up 40 times. It's like super powerful. It's extremely easy to use. It's like a low code, no code solution. Anybody can come in here and build essentially what's a kind of like a database. So it has kind of a spreadsheet structure. It feels a lot like you're using something like a Google Sheets, but underneath it, you can actually create um, relational relations. Sorry, you can create relations under the hood, which makes it essentially a relational database, which is extremely awesome and powerful. It also lets you expose that front end for someone to write into it without a programmer being involved. So that's kind of the key here, right? So what this is for your administration group, your business analysts, right? The people who are not necessarily programmers who need to like get information, build little tiny apps, whatever, play with stuff, and maybe expose that to their small numbers of people or their customers or whatever, but there isn't enough money or time to get developers involved in the front end of it, right? You probably have some kind of database that you'd want this to be in eventually, but to build it end to end is not something that's possible. However, it's still required that it gets done. So this is usually how people would do it. Now, the problem though, of course, is if the data's in here, yeah, well, the data's in here, right? What now? So what I've done is I've taken BaseQL again, and this is actually this is what it looks like once you've connected to a particular endpoint. Um, I've said, go ahead and point me at Airtable and put a GraphQL front end in front of it. And that's what we have here. So we are literally looking here at a version of that Airtable that has a GraphQL front end in front of it. And this is their version of a playground, a little sandbox that you can build out your queries inside of and pull back the data on them. Pretty darn cool, if I do say so myself. But still not quite where we want to be, right? Like, all right, so I have a GraphQL front end and I have like a playground and I'm pulling back JSON, but okay. But now what? Okay, well, let's take it one step further and get to here. Now here, you all know what this is. This is a data table, jQuery data table, our favorite. And this is pulling in data from a GraphQL endpoint and displaying it. Now, if I can display it in a table, that means I have the data and I can do whatever the heck I want with it in ColdFusion, including ETLing it, maybe assigning its own ID, whatever the heck you want to do, scrubbing it, cleaning it, doing all the things, and then possibly then putting that into some other database that is more accessible and less what they call shadow data or hidden data, right? The Airtable is kind of shadow data. The only people who can see it are the ones who have accounts, right? They can't really get into it unless they get access to it. That costs money. But here you could potentially pull that data in and do things with it. So let's take a look and see what that code actually looks like. So do do do. So here it is, and it is a fairly simple code actually. So we start off, and by the way, this is if you try to do this in your current version of ColdFusion, it will fail because we do not have this in CF 2021. This is a CF 2023 feature. You would have to actually use CF HTTP and fumble around a lot and do a lot of escaping. That's why we put this in natively. But as I said, in like not very much time at all, you'll be able to get 2023 and use this natively. So what are we doing here? So we start off by creating a client. And so this is all kind of built in to CF 2023. We've got hooks that are built in for it. We pass in a service name, a client name, and then a service URL. And you might be going, oh, Mark, what are you doing? That service URL is exposed. You can see it. Oh my gosh, people are going to go and do bad things to it. Well, yeah, I mean, you can. If you want to go pull down my fake data and take a look at it, you can, no problem. I have it locked as read-only, and this doesn't give you any access to anything beyond being able to pull the data and read it. Now, that being said, if it wasn't read-only, if I if I had it unprotected um, and open, that would be bad because then you could go in and change my data and add tasks to my day, and I don't have enough time, so we're not doing that. Um, okay, now this is a big difference between the way that you would do it in an older version of ColdFusion and the way that you'll be doing it now, and that is that I'm literally putting in the query that you saw here. Basically, it's the raw query. It's raw GQL. Before, you would have to put it all in line. It'd be a string. You'd have to escape a bunch of stuff. It was really ugly. You'd have to take query and put it in quotes for some reason. I don't even know why. But whoopsie. Hello. But here, no. You just copy and paste that, and I'm just pulling back the ID, the item, the notes, and done. And then I do have to do a little bit of fumbling with it because originally you get back a lot of stuff. And in fact, I am just going to, for poops and chuckles, I'm going to show you what it actually looks like when you get the raw response, because this is also something that's somewhat new. Um, I go here, GraphQL demo, get all data native. Oh, no, Mark. What do we say about live coding? Oh, huh. Using a variable before it exists. Classic Mark. All right, so the top there, the struct, is what you get back raw from the GQL client that we created. Now that's a little bit different than what you would normally see. Like normally, if you're hitting a GQL endpoint, you get back basically just the data, but we wanted to provide a little bit more than that. We actually have like the execution time, the service URL, any variables that were passed, so that you can actually, if you want to, you can use these things for any debugging that you need to do. It's your choice. But of course, I didn't need that here. And so, I will move. Hopefully, I removed the right line. So that's what I'm pulling back. And I'm pulling back just JSON. And of course, as you saw, I take that JSON, I can put it into a struct. And with a struct, you can make it into a query or whatever the heck you want. It's up to you. It's your data. Cool. Okay, so that is number 2. It's 10:30. Okay, I better get going. So let's move on to the next part. AI. Who here likes AI? Raise your hands. AI is awesome. AI is like, thank you. I didn't mean literally, Scott. So AI is awesome. Everybody's using it. It's like the new hotness. I mean, like I use it every day. It's super wild. And of course, there's a lot of different AIs. Adobe has their own AI. For a long time, we've had an internal AI that we've used on some of our products called Sensei, but that wasn't really available to people. If you use Photoshop, though, you've used it. If you used pretty much almost any product, not ColdFusion yet. If you were in DC, we made an announcement on that. So, but now there's a lot of open AIs, including OpenAI, that you can go out and you can play with. You can sign up for ChatGPT, and you can have it, I don't know, write a poem about drinking water if you want, right? Like it'll do it. Um, and of course, there's like Dolly for images. There's Midjourney. Adobe themselves has opened up Firefly as a demo for doing generative AI art that you can use. There's something called Whisper for audio to text, which is actually kind of legit and awesome. And the use cases for that in like name a vertical are wild, right? So this will take any recorded audio and return it back to you as text that you can then drop into like a database, right? So you can like, yeah, it's cool. It's like I don't know, it's like a answering machine, but high tech and AI. And then moderation. So AI is super good at doing things like, hey, is this like an angry conversation? Is this like, are people doing bad things? Are people trying to like say bad words, but they're kind of hiding them, and so they're getting away with it, but you still know what they're saying? So it's pretty good at figuring that out. And so all of these things are available on OpenAI. via APIs, which is what we're talking about today. Now, you do need a paid account. So this is like not super awesome. You need a paid account, but there's like a free block, right? So basically, they expect that you'll go over your tokens. What the heck is a token? Okay, this is the not so fun part of AI right now, in that they had to figure out how to charge you. So how do you charge for AI? You could charge by word, but words are different lengths. That doesn't work. Phrase? Letter? Like, how would you do it? It would be weird. So they figured out how to break up words and phrases and ideas into these things called tokens, which is usually like several letters and blocks of things. And you get a certain number of tokens in, and you get a certain number of tokens out per price tier. And you can usually buy them in sets of 20,000 or 30,000 or whatever. And I think you get a certain amount. You have to double check. And this changes, by the way, like every day. So you get a certain amount for free, and you can use them up, and then when you go over the next thing, you get paid. So this is actually a really big deal for using this inside of an app. By the way, if you're going to be building an app, just know the possibility very much exists that you may use up your tier if you're not doing proper token optimization, right? If you're just like letting people go hog wild and use whatever they want as much as they want all the time for like, $5 a month, yeah, you might be in trouble, right? You're going to get a bill and you won't be happy about it. This is actually a really good. There's been this drive towards doing what are called large language model games. But the problem there is it's extremely difficult to predict how much the costs will be off of an LLM game. And so what you're actually seeing is people doing their own they're using Llama and things that are like running locally and trying to, instead of basically being charged by token, they're trying to figure out like how much their GPUs and stuff are getting hit. Uh, and it's just a mess. It's still, this is the Wild West, and it's going to get wilder and westier before we end. So let's start off. Let's take a look at a couple of things here. So I'm going to start off real basic and easy with a hello world example from OpenAI. All my stuff is from OpenAI, by the way, because they were the easiest to set up. They were the easiest to go to. By the way, there's an OpenAI API sign up link in my useful links. You can sign up for it. You do have to put like a card on it and do all that. So apologies for that. But here is a very, very basic example. Now this is fun. Guess who wrote this? If you guess the dude with a mustache on the screen, you are incorrect. I did not write this. OpenAI wrote this. So just for fun, I decided that I was going to have ChatGPT write my code for me in these examples, right? Now I cheated a tiny bit because I did have to have some of the information in it. So what I ended up doing was I wrote this in a very horrible old school way. I used tags and I made it just kind of not very good for each of the examples. So I pre-wrote them in a really bad way, and I put it into ChatGPT and I said, rewrite this as CF script and optimize it, make it good, essentially. And what's kind of fun is it wrote all three of them differently. So let's take a look at how they did it. And all three are valid and all three are viable and all three work. But it was a surprise to me. I actually thought that they would do it this way, both ways. Okay, so starting off, the very first thing, I'm just calling it hello. It's like a hello world example. It's going out to OpenAI's APIs and getting a list of their models. Okay, and this is not like runway, you know, looking all like this models. No, this is what you can do with the APIs. And I mentioned some of them earlier: Dolly, ChatGPT, which they have different versions, Whisper, moderation, all of that, right? So I'm going out, I'm pulling that, and it's a very easy thing. You just add a param to your call, which is your key, and that's all you need actually. So I go and I send it, and I'm just going to dump out what I get back, and that looks like. Hold on. Let's make this a little bit bigger so that I can actually read these. Nope. No. No. Oh, yes. Here it is. Okay. There you go. So there is there you go. There is all of the models that are available. And good Lord, this is a long list and kind of an ugly hello world if I'm being honest. But hey, it's AI. It doesn't care about your feelings. I'm kidding. They do. They really do. All right. So cool. So that's kind of cool, but not super useful. Let's do something useful. Let's use actual chat GPT to do a completion of a text. And so this is one of the things that you can do. So essentially chat GPT is kind of a predictor, right? It predicts the thing that you want it to do depending on what the prompt is that you're sending in. And so here what I'm doing is I'm using DaVinci 002 on ChatGPT in OpenAI, and I'm sending the prompt the quick brown fox. Now, I'm hoping we're all techies here. We know what we're going to get back already, which is why this is a good example. But there's a few interesting things here that I'm adding in also. And for this example, they're not actually that useful, but they get useful as things get more complicated. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through them. All right. So starting off, I'm sending the content type. I'm sending my auth, which is the key, which I have hidden because no using my keys. And then I put in the model. I put in the prompt. What is temperature? Okay. So temperature is a differential between how frisky the AI will get when returning stuff. Okay. And this is a little bit of there's probably whole white papers on how this actually works. But essentially, if there is a range of answers, those ranges fit inside of their own strata, let's just say. If you continually hit the endpoint and have a temperature of 0, you're going to hit the same strata pretty much every time. You're going to hit we'll call it the default strata, right? You see this sometimes with some of the AI, like some of the generative art AIs, where you kind of get the same thing again and again and again, right? It's because the temperature is very low. It's not having a wild result. And sometimes you want very similar things, but sometimes you don't. And I've actually really noticed that a lot of these generative AI art things don't have a lot of sliders for that. And I'm prediction that it's going to become a thing, that you're going to actually see some temperature slides and things like that. So here, the quick brown fox only has one answer. I mean, hopefully, right? And so it really doesn't matter what this temperature. I could set this to a lot more than this probably, and it would hopefully not bring back anything weird. I don't know. I actually haven't played with it too much. So, but that's what temperature is. Max tokens. So I talked earlier about how many tokens can you return, right? So I am only allowing this to utilize a maximum of 50 tokens. Okay, now that's 50 for in, and that's 50 for back. And when we get the return, you'll actually see it does actually show you what those tokens are, and we'll go over that in a little bit. N1, so N is the number of returns that I want. I want one. Cool. And then stop, which is the stop between prompts. So this is, you can think of it as like a divider. Okay. You say API response is equal to HPI service, get prefix, and I go out and I grab it back. All right, so let's take a look and see. All right, can anybody guess what the quick brown fox is going to return? Please, I hope. I hope I'm not the only one here. No? All right. It jumps over the lazy dog. Fonts. Adobe. Come on, people. It's the classic. It uses every single letter in the alphabet. I think. I think that's why they use that. All right. So here's the return that I got back. And I got my prompt back. I got jumps over the lazy dog. And there were no problems. The finish reason was it hit a stop at the end. And here's the fun part. How many tokens? So it used up a total of 9 of my precious, precious tokens. 4 in and 5 out. Now you can kind of see, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess that was based that, you might be, oh, is it the number of words? It's really not. And this is where people get kind of confused. They're like, oh yeah, well there were 5 words, so each word is a token. It's not. That's a good way to get yourself in a lot of trouble. And people are looking into ways to potentially optimize or figure out ways to do this more efficiently for people that are using tokens. Not everyone is, though. Some folks do it differently, but OpenAI has decided on this particular way of doing things, and hey, there we are. Okay, so that's fun, but we're still kind of like, okay, there's not an app, right? All right, we're almost there. We're almost at an app. And I'm almost out of time, but I'll finish, I promise. Okay, so let's take a look at something a little bit more fun, and that is creating images, because that's what we love to do. We all love to go on Mid-Journey and make cats in suits of armor and flying unicorns drinking lattes in space, right? Like we all love to do all that cool stuff. So I'm going to make something like that. I'm going to start off with a very basic example where I'm just going to be passing in, and you can kind of see here, like there's an if statement up here. If I get something from a form prompt, we're going to do something different. So just ignore that for the moment, because I'm just going to load this page by itself, and I'm going to have it generate for me an adorable anime cupcake in space in a tutu. All right, that is going to be my prompt that I'm going to be sending in to Dolly. So that is going to be my, that's going to be what I'm going to be using to generate this. And this is the endpoint that I'm using. It's a post, right? And you can also see like this again is using a different structure than the previous one. Like, funny, right? These all look the same when I passed them in and told it to optimize. So it's apparently the temperature on that was a little bit different. Haha. Okay, and what are we going to get back here, right? So I'm saying I want 2 returns. The prompt is the prompt, and the size I want is 1024 by 1024. This is important if you're going to build something with generative AI art returns. So you're like, wait a minute, there's no letters, there's no numbers, there's no whatever. Like, how does tokens work for this? So tokens work for this by the sizes that you're generating of the images. That's how they do it for that. And so you can buy token sets of certain sizes of images, which gets really confusing and complex. Like I said, it's really Wild Westy right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get back that struct. It's going to have a bunch of stuff in it. I'm going to pull the data back. I'm going to write out the data, which is which has the images in it, and then afterwards, and if I actually used something to come to this page, I'm going to write it out elsewhere, but not doing that on the first try. So let's see what happens. So we go here and we go AI images. All right, that's going to take a second because this is AI, and it is not super fast. But there you go. That is what you get back. So super cute anime cupcake in a tutu in space. And it generated 2 images for me, like I said. And here is where those images live. Okay. So this puts it up into blob storage on Windows.net. That's kind of how this API works. This is where this gets put. You probably will want to pull that back out and put it elsewhere because I'm not sure what the life cycle is of this particular image. I'm assuming it's not long. Okay, cool. We're ready for a nap? I know I am. Welcome to Crap GPT, which is actually not GPT. I named this thinking I was being clever, and then I realized it should be like less than mid journey or something like that. All right, I need a prompt. Somebody other than Scott. All right, Scott, you can give me a prompt. We'll do multiples. Give me a prompt, Scotty. Remember, this is a children's TV show. Come on, Scotty, you got one. I know you got one. Go ahead, y'all. All right, someone else give me a prompt. It can be anything, almost. Be nice about it. Puppy's doing Star Wars cosplay. All right. Thank you. I love it. Okay, Puppy's doing Star Wars cosplay. So I hit, yeah, AI woo. And theoretically, there you go. Oh, that poor puppy. I don't know what happened to that puppy, but it's not making it into the next. Someone added with cheeseburgers on their heads, which can only make this better. Oh my goodness. Fader. Uh, and there you go. Okay, that's apparently puppies doing cos, and you can see. I mean, of course, AI begins to like lose its track really quickly, right? But this is what it's doing. So this is actually going on doing a generative AI art of your prompt or whatever you think you're putting on here. I've had more luck with cute, adorable kittens doing kung fu on a platter. Oh, John says Woof Vader. So there you go. So that's pretty good. Like that's fun. Darth Vader doing ballet. Heck yeah. I want to see that. Okay. So these are all pieces that I've put together for you that are using APIs from a variety of places. I'm saving these. Oh, why does he have? Oh my gosh, that bottom one. Oh, okay. I'm not even touching that one. I may have to do a lot of editing on this one, folks. I don't know if this one's going on the website. Um, yeah. Okay. So that's all the code samples I have, and I'm kind of running close to time on here. So we got about 12 minutes for questions. Yeah, it's no longer a kids show, folks. Gonna have to have you all sign some paperwork later. So questions, because I'm sure there's questions about how to do this stuff, what you can do, where to go, all of that. There's a lot you can do with this, folks, and CF is the optimal way to tie all these things together. Is kind of my point here. Like CF is capable of doing all of these things with all the power that you're all used to doing your normal application development with, right? Like you can still do the things that you do today, but then pull in this really cool stuff externally, and create Vader doing ballet and translate stuff. I mean, all kinds of cool stuff. You could have a Airtable list of prompts that are in Spanish that you then translate. I mean, did you say that we can't do this until CF 2020? Okay, so SMA asks, I missed it, but did you say we can't do these until CF 2023? Only the GraphQL and only in the method that I showed. You could still do, if you wanted to do some GraphQL stuff, you could use CF HTTP. I do have some, if you look on my GitHub, I think there is some old school stuff for GraphQL. The rest of this, absolutely, you can do this in any version of ColdFusion going back, God knows, I don't know, 10. Like we've had CF-HTTP for a long time. And I think it usually works. Make sure you have updates and stuff for security. I mean, you obviously shouldn't be using those, but Any modern version absolutely has it, and you could do that. Is the code you showed going to be on your repo? Yes, Josh, absolutely. This will be pushed to the repo in 20, 30 minutes, something like that. Yep. Sure thing, Josh, no problem. ChatGPT, Graph and Airtable, it's a great combination of tools. Yeah, no, it's and there's more. I mean, again, like you could use I didn't really show it, but you could use Google Sheets, and Google actually has like a front end for it, right? Like you could do Google Forms to front end your Google Sheet, which is what the Running Club does. Um, and so again, it's a low code, no code solution that anybody can build. And then you can pull that data back out and use it as a developer. Because I know, like, I don't know if you've tried to use like their native API on Sheets, but it is just god awful. I do not like it. It's ugly and sort of same with the API for Airtable. They have an API, but to use it is just not fun and very ugly. And so the GraphQL gives you this like amazing amount of power to be able to go out and hit it. When will AI replace all of us developers? Well, in your case, Scott, I'm afraid I have some bad news. Kidding. No, no. In all seriousness, this question comes up a lot, and the answer really is it's not going to replace us. It's going to enable us to code better and become better developers. Um, it's just gonna it like this comes up every time there's some new thing that comes up, like IDEs with code completion, right? There was this huge outcry. Oh my gosh, well, we don't need programmers anymore, right? No, you totally do. You still need to know how to write a program. You still need to understand logic. If I had asked ChatGPT to write me some code to hit its APIs, it would have written me something generic that wouldn't have worked, right? You still have to understand the underlying uh, mechanics of it, right? And on top of that, all I would have gotten is something that did one thing, right? It wouldn't have authentication, it wouldn't have UI, it wouldn't have any workflow, nothing, right? So as developers, we have these skills that, I mean, I don't want to say they're irreplaceable, but it will be I think, a very long time until somebody, a CAO could go, I have an idea. I want an app that orders me a puppy for lunch for petting, right? And then it'll like write it and put it in the app store, and then they're like making millions of dollars. Like, will that ever happen? I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I'll be long dead by then, so who cares? And by the way, this also, I want to say this applies to artists too. I'm an artist, by the way. I'm a painter. And so, there is this whole talk about generative AI replacing artists, and there's obviously some troubling stuff about where some of these guys get their training data. I'm not going to comment on that for legal issues. I will say that the Adobe AI is trained on what we're calling ethically sourced stuff. Whether you agree with that is up to you and your lawyers. I, for one, think that we did a fairly good job balancing ethics with needing the data. Other people were not so clear about where they were getting their stuff, so there is that problem. However, you've all heard the adage: every story that's ever been written has been written, right? Every image that's ever been painted that's ever going to be painted has been painted. Like we all learn from the past. I learned how to paint by watching other painters. Um, yes. Will HR continue asking for 3 years experience of stuff released last week? Probably 3 years, Bob. They're going to get worse, I'm sure. Uh, John asked, Mark, I'm making lots of effort to get my knowledge on the web so the AI search engines start quoting me. Me too. I definitely want to be like top of the list there. Yeah, sustainable, carbon neutral, ethically responsible. Thank you, Josh. That's a really good point too, and that's something that people don't think about. And this is actually another reasoning. Uh, there's actually something to be. I mentioned token optimization earlier. That actually has a really there's a point there talking about like carbon neutral stuff. and that is that this uses a lot of power, guys. Like AI uses a ton of electricity. Like we were all complaining about, blockchain and all that using up all this electricity. Well, AI is doing it now, and the less optimized your stuff is, the more it's doing that. By the way, so there is actually some really good reasoning behind that, right? Like if everything suddenly uses AI, we're going to start using a lot more power, and if we're just kind of doing it willy nilly, it's like every car has a Hellcat engine in it. I'm sure Scotty would appreciate that. Um, but the best thing about ChatGPT is we stopped talking about blockchain and crypto. Yes. Yes. So Elle says they found it useful for adding comments to ColdFusion code when I can't remember exactly what I had done at the time, and that's an awesome point too. Like, you can take your CF code and do things like add comments to say what this does, or is this secure, right? Or can you rewrite this to optimize the output? All of these things are possible in ChatGPT, and it's pretty darn good at it. Now, it's potentially not as good at it in CF as it is in maybe some other languages, but it's getting better. As training data kind of will start to come in, and we start doing that more, then yeah, we'll start to see it. Like GitHub Copilot is pretty good. They train that mostly on like their own GitHub repos, of which, again, like not a huge number of them are CF, but a fair number are. It's actually quite good at understanding tag-based stuff because there's a lot more tags in that, just because historically we've used tags a lot more. They did train it on your repos. I know. Well, unless they were private repos, in which case they say they didn't train it on there. Wink nudge. um, but I mean, hey, I'm happy. You can train it on my repo all you want. Please, like, I just if I can make it so it's easier for people to do ColdFusion programming, heck yeah, let's do it. I'm happy to oblige there. I would release all the code that I have on there. Yeah, so I mean, some things you're going to start seeing more is potentially docs. One announcement, by the way, before I sign off here, that I just want to get out here real quick is if you were not in DC, then you missed the keynote. And during the keynote, there was a very important announcement that was made. Like all of you know, CF22 to 23, as I've said multiple times, this session is coming out like almost now, like very, very close. It's coming very soon. But the next version of ColdFusion is going to be 2023. Sorry, 24. Yeah, that was real exciting. Oh, it's the next one. It's the same one. No, 2024. Next year, we are having another version of ColdFusion. Yeah, very cool, right? And what's going into it? Well, a bunch of stuff, and I think I might have a talk on that coming up pretty soon. But the big one there is we're going to have native generative AI integrations, including with Adobe Sensei. For the very first time in ColdFusion history, we are going to be getting Sensei power inside of ColdFusion next year. So really big deal. It's going to be, yeah. That was sort of like the big one that was put out there. Also, some other. I mean, there's lots of great stuff coming next year. Oh, by the way, not to bury the lead, but you know when the next version of ColdFusion after that is coming? 2025. We may not have code names anymore, Josh, because we're just going to come out with these damn things every year. Yep. If you're hearing it here first, you heard it here first. ColdFusion will now be updated yearly. Damn right we are. Yep. We are no longer going to be doing these giant monolithic blocks of, steel that we're dropping on your heads every 2 years. We're going to be doing this every year. The price model is going to be altered. Yes, Jim. I don't know what that is yet, but we are lots of changes. There are so many changes coming down that it's going to make your head spin, guys. So yeah, it's going to be Yeah. No. There is going to be massive changes in everything. The way that we deliver ColdFusion, the way that we price ColdFusion, the way that we license ColdFusion, the way that you use ColdFusion is going to change. We are finally getting the engine up to revs and getting it going. Um, cheaper is a state of mind, Jim. If I can't comment on exactly how things are going, but we are going to make ColdFusion easier to use for more people. How about that? And details to come. By the way, if you and right sized, correct, and properly put in the places that it needs to be. That's exactly right. Um, by the way, just real quick, I know I'm 1 minute over, but I just want to get this out. We are having ColdFusion Summit in 2023 in Vegas this year, early October, first week-ish, something like that. I'm not sure exactly when, but somewhere around that time frame is the only time we could ever get any space in Vegas. But we're doing it. Get your tickets in now. Get ready. Don't get your tickets in because I don't know the exact dates, but tell your bosses you need to go. Okay? I'm just saying, you do not want to miss this year's Vegas. Um, Warren, yes, it was. Vegas is I don't know exactly the dates. They were supposed to be released, but all of our people are sick. So I think we're gonna see a call for speakers and an announcement for the registration this week. My sort of rough guesstimate from everything that I've been told is the first week somewhere in October, somewhere in there. I don't know exactly what the days and dates or whatever are, but that seems to be the only freaking time that we can get time booked in Vegas because it's nuts over there. And I don't know. I think the Mirage doesn't exist anymore. HB, the Mirage is gone. It's now something. Oh, registration will be open this week. Apurva, thank you. Yay! Apurva with the save. Very nice. Yes, it's going to be the Hard Rock. So theoretically, if the Hard Rock still maintains the same relationships that they've had with us in the past, it will be at the Hard Rock. If not, then I don't know. We'll all camp out. I have a trailer. Like we can hang out on my trailer. It'll be cool. Scotty can mix drinks. He's great at it. All right, everyone. So I'm going to stop recording. If you want to hang out, we can hang out. But I don't want this recording to get too